live. For some reason that didn't look like it was going to work. Let's go ahead and bring up all messages. Hopefully the audio is working. I did test the mics a bunch of times this time, but we're going to look at some really, really strong knife lock mechanisms. And the thing about it is a lot of people put a lot of stock in how strong a knife lock is. I want to do a little bit of up front and tell you guys that really you don't need a super strong knife lock, in all honesty. I mean, you really, really don't. Let's, hopefully there's some people here. Let's see, whoever's here, can you do me a favor and check? Drop me a chat in here just so I can make sure it's set up right, because I was having problems getting everything set up for this live feed this morning. And it is earlier than usual. I do know that. However, I've been up since like 4 o'clock this morning and I don't want to spend any more time waiting. Oh, where did you go? Where did you go? So at any rate, knife locks are a big topic in the knife community. A lot of people talk about knife locks and how important they are and things like that. And the lock mechanisms that are on knives can bring you some inherent qualities in a knife, like a knife like this with a really good detent is something that you can flip open, like a flipper knife, like one of these. The inherent lock, the lock mechanism in this and some other locks inherently make you able to build up that force that you need to flip a knife open. Some locks aren't as good for that. Hey, what's up, Will B? There we go. Now I can see that I do have the chat set up properly. I'm going to say that the strength of a lock really, for me, does not have that much. It doesn't have that much pertinence on a knife, and I'm going to show you why, because that lock does not make that. This knife doesn't have a lock. It's simply a spring. So this, like, there's spring tension on a couple flat spots on this. This lock doesn't have it. This knife doesn't have a lock. You can use this knife the same as you can use this one. This lock gives it the ability to do that. So there are some features that, some qualities that a knife lock does bring to the forefront and things like that. And there are some locks that allow you to do stuff with knives that you couldn't do with a lot of other folding knives. We'll talk about that. The Triad lock, most notably, you can take this, which, yes, this is currently my primary EDC for right now because I'm getting ready to film a video with this two-handed. Guys, I wear triple XL gloves. That should put that in perspective. 16 3/4 inches. There's things I can do with this knife because of how it's built that I couldn't do with other knives. Not like, I mean, I can chop and do things with this knife because of the way this lock is built that's going to allow it to be stronger, and that's it. For my work, most of the time, it's ease of deactivation of lock. Yeah, there's things that go with it. That's one of the really sweet things about the ambidextrous locks that you can get. So we are going to take these knives, but not this one. This one's too big to film. I have its little brother. We're going to take these knives apart, and I'm going to show you what's inside these locks that makes them work so well. So it is going to be a little bit longer, a little bit more technical type of video. That's the wrong one. I'm not putting that back in my pocket. This, like I said, I've been very, very surprised, not to get off topic too far, really surprised at how much stuff I can do with this incredibly large knife. So we are going to turn this around. Will, do me a favor. Let me know if the audio changes when I walk over here, because I want to grab my coffee that I left sit on the counter over here. So did the audio stay pretty much the same level? Out of curiosity, I've had so much coffee already today. So I think we're going to start with, I don't know which one we're going to start with, but let's turn this around. You would have known a change in the audio. Let's turn this around, and we're going to, Now, keep in mind, it's going to be kind of awkward for me to take these apart 100% on in frame. So, and I can move these up a little bit, but basically I've got 3 of the strongest locks you're going to find. You've got the ram lock that's on this amphibian from Microtech, which is a crossbar lock. You've got the Triad lock, which I think is the strongest lock on the market. This is the strongest knife lock you're going to find. And then really up there is this one, which is the compression lock. And I'm going to show you why they're so strong, what's inside of them that makes them that way. But first, we have to look at this lock, which is pretty much, this is the golden boy, the golden child of the knife industry. And I'm going to move over here to the side. So this is the frame lock, and it's a simple mechanism. It is a pretty strong lock if it's done properly. So what you have is a lock that swings out across onto this radius area. There's spring tension on this, so it sits on there. And so when that area of the blade right here comes to a point where it opens up across this, now that's not a real good engagement. It's going to kick over. And so what that does is that puts in like linear pressure, but this is not the strongest lock. You can have failures of this lock mechanism simply because, let me know if the audio changes when I do this. I got to move this cord ever so slightly. You can have lock failures on a frame lock. And you wind up with some wear and tear issues on a frame lock that you don't get on these other locks. And we'll really talk about what's in there, because we're going to take this knife apart and I'll show you why you can have failures. So I know that this is a T15, I believe, T10, T15, T15 and a T8 on these. Hey, Todd Carr, got a bunch of people on our lunch break. That's cool. So this knife's easy to take apart, just simple 3 screws. So I'll show you why you can have failures and why this is as popular as it is not the strongest lock you're gonna find. So this is my Ferrum Forge NTAC. So I got to do it this way. I have to put a little bit of tension this direction to break that pivot loose, because it's a single-sided pivot. So yes, that's my no talent ass clown. So pivot screw and the T8. There's only 3 screws that are holding this together. So I'm doing this so I can show you exactly why it's not the perfect lock. As much as I like frame locks, they do suffer from some flaws. Let's get this scale off of here. So the way this works is, let me get that out of the way. So this area of the blade tang right here is radiused. You can see how that, right, and you can see on there where this lock bar engages with the lock tang. And you can see it slides over and it locks it in place. Now, the reason that this is never going to be as strong as the other ones, and we'll look at it, is this isn't necessarily something that's going to stay engaged. If you put pressure, let's see here. There's your stop pin. So it's all locked in between here, right? You can see the lock bar is pinching this in here. What can happen is, depending on how your radius was done on that, if you put, see that? If you don't get it all the way over, or if this radius isn't a good angle to marry up with the actual lock bar, you can have, now I'm forcing it to do it, you can get what's called a lock failure or lock slip. And you'll feel it because you can see if it doesn't engage all the way. Now, if that radius, if that doesn't engage all the way, if it's just over here, you can push the lock bar out of the way. And you can have that happen. And if these corners wear and stuff like that, this lock could start and fail. It simply isn't as linear a lock as some of the others. It requires a little bit of angular movement of the lock, which means that when you push down on it, you can force angular movement of the lock across that radius. See what I'm saying? Where it marries up. If it's done well, they usually are very, very strong. They do not fail very often, but they do have a failure point. The reason that these ones are so much stronger is because they are not like that. This one is, but it's got another factor in there. This is the strongest of this type. This is the compression lock, and it's the one we're going to look at first while this is fresh in our mind. So let me get this put back together. Really, really simple knife to take apart, put back together. The other one's not necessarily as simple. This one is simply 3 screws. Some of the other ones are a little bit more complicated. It's not that they're complicated, it's that, you know, the way they're designed, the way they're built, you can run into some problems. Be shady. Good morning. So let's put the pivot back in this one. And we're going to take apart the compression lock next before we start getting into some of the others. Now, I am having some problems. You guys will have to bear with me. I'm having a lot of problems with the nerve damage in my arm today. I'm having I had planned this and then realized I was having some problems with fine motor skills real quickly into the planning. So as you can see, like I said, I got oil on my hands now. So your lock mechanism simply is this bar, and it swings over and it locks. Now this is really, really stable, but like I said, if you put enough tension going this way, you can swing that arm out of the way if the radius is not great. So there's this one. Now let me put this away because we're going to move these other ones out of the way as well. And we're going to take a look at those in a minute. So the compression lock that Spyderco makes is an incredibly strong lock. Now, basically, it is the equivalent of a frame lock. And people argue with me, well, not a frame lock. Let's be more accurate with it. It's basically taking the mechanism that is in like a liner lock. Now, this isn't a true liner lock. This is actually a nested frame lock. It's scaled. But it's basically the same concept, but you put it on the back. And you can see you've got this arm here. It swings open. There's your lock interface, just like you saw on the other one, and it drops in. But there's a big difference inside of this. So we're going to get it apart, and I'll tell you. But the big thing is, as opposed to this, where it's simply your lock and the interface there, you do have a stop pin back here, but there's nothing else here on the front side of the lock that prevents your lock from going anywhere. In here, your lock is completely pinched. Can you see it right there? That lock bar is completely in there, and then that stop pin. So your lock bar is pinched in here. So that means that you've got a lot more material. It's almost impossible to make one of these fail because it's locked in there. So as you're pushing down, that pressure that you're pushing this way is also pushing that lock bar up against the pin. And I'll show you. We're going to take it apart. We'll take it apart from this side so you can see the top of the lock and everything. So I believe that is the exact same setup on this one. Yep. So I still only need those same 2 locks, right? Who's here? Rickart's here, Bladed Ginger, EI Navarro, and everything. I just cleaned this the other day so that it didn't look so filthy. Because this does get carried a lot, and it spends a lot of time in videos. My nose itches really bad today. So this one, not real difficult to take apart. Spyderco's have gotten their assembly and disassembly down so much better, so much easier on this one than it was on any of my other Spyderco knives. They have a tendency to be finicky to take apart. Now, this does have 3 screws. The nice thing about this one is all 3 of these screws, the body screws, are exactly the same. So I don't have to keep... If you take your knives apart, I'm going to tell you right now, it's nice to have multiple bowls or something to have to prevent you from needing or getting parts mixed up, because sometimes the screws are different. So as you can see inside this lock, see how your lock bar is completely pinched? Once it's engaged, it's completely pinched in there. Like, you would really have to, like, there's no real way to cause this to slip because the angle of pressure is not the same. The angle of pressure is more, instead of being downwards, it's upwards into that, and then it's pinched in there really tightly in between that stop pin. So to get this lock to fail is almost impossible. And then when you look at the lock interface, that lock comes over way farther into that than it does on the other lock. See how much farther that comes up in? So you're pinched in between. Now, you could cause this lock to fail, I imagine. You could have a bad radius. I've never seen one of these fail. This is one of the strongest locks on the market. So it's pinched in there, right? In between. And then you have to push out. So with the pressure on this side going this way, as opposed to, you know, pushing up against it a different direction, it's much more straight up and down than it was on the other one, which is kind of back and at an angle. It's definitely a very, very good mechanism for the strength of a lock right here. You can see it's really easy to engage the lock, but it also, like I said, that lock bar travels a lot farther in than what we saw. Let me grab it again. It travels a lot farther in than what you see on this. See how that lock is not traveling very far. It could possibly, if you put enough tension this way, slip that out. It's not enclosed like it is on that one. As much as I like frame locks, they are not the best lock out there. There's another lock, and we're not going to take it apart because, well, I just don't feel like doing it because they're a pain. A plunger lock is a lot like that. Because the lock goes this way and then the pressure comes back. There's no way, it is opposite directions. There's no way for you to push on this really. I mean, this is kind of at an angle, but there's no real way for you to collapse that lock. You can bend that post, but this isn't near as strong as these ones that we're looking at. So yeah, there's a whole lot going on in here. So this is kind of like a liner lock or a frame lock that's been flipped on its back, but the stop pin encloses that in there, which means there's a lot going on in there. And like I said, the travel of that in, and then how it is all enclosed in there is a great, great mechanism. Can you see here? Like, you would basically have to, that is so pinched in there, to get this to fail once it's locked in that spot, you'd basically have to either break this part of the bar off, break that chunk of steel off, or completely shear off this pin. Well, not necessarily a pin, but the head of the screw. So it's a very, very robust lock, right? And if you guys don't like the little round, I'll show you. This is kind of off the topic. I don't like the look of the nasty hole that Spyderco puts in it. So this is the lanyard hole that typically is in a Spyderco Military 2 or also in a PM2. You can get these from Glow Rhino. It is a tritium vial that's in there, and it just fills that spot. And it's much more attractive than the way it looks with the hole in it. So yeah, just a simple little change in this means this lock is much, much stronger. But the other thing, let me put this back together real quick, or at least put the scale on it so I can show you what I'm talking about. The other thing about this is the safety factor. So this lock that's on a frame lock or a liner lock, I have to disengage the lock, but that puts my thumb right in the travel of the blade. And if any of you guys that are knife guys know, see that little mark right there? That is a scar, and it's not just one cut. That is where numerous knives have dropped across my thumb because they were so smooth, like this one is, where they just kind of dropped across and hit my thumb. This lock is not like that because your lock bar is on the back. So you don't even have to put your finger in the travel of the blade to disengage that lock, right? I can do it like this. Look at that. Super, super safe, super, super strong. And when it's assembled properly, there's really no way you're going to force a failure on this lock. Now, you could, like I said, because it still does have that radiused area, right? You have that radiused area where you could cause lock slippage if the radius was done incorrectly or something like that. But very, very rarely are you going to see one of these fail. So let's go ahead and get this put back together. And guys, if you got any questions, I can see the chat. I am behind the camera. CME is great for lefties. The CME just makes, even if you're a right-handed guy, the CME, which is what this little black piece is here, the CME, compression made easy, it just makes the compression lock so much better. It just basically makes it like a left-handed button lock. And I absolutely love, I won't ever own a compression lock without a CME. There's one on my PM2. It basically allows you to have better access. So it takes up that space. So if you take this off, this is an additional part. I should have mentioned that. It's an additional part. I have one on here too. It's an additional piece that you can buy and it glues on. But if you don't have that on, you got to stick your finger all the way in to disengage the lock. It's kind of just brings that to the surface. It takes up that weird spot where your thumb would drop into where the lock cutout is. But it also allows you easier access to that. And if you're left-handed, instead of having to stick your thumb all the way down in there and pinch it and maybe drop your knife, it allows you to disengage that lock a lot easier. Oh, I'm sorry, a lot easier. Let's go ahead and get this pivot back in. Oh, tell me if you lost audio. I just slammed into the receiver for the microphone. Let me see. Doesn't look like it. So put the pivot back in. So Fook Doocy. So I just got to make sure. Pivot's tight. There we go. So there's that. So that one still does have, like I said, because that does swing over, it still does have a radius, which is why of the 3 of these locks, I think this is, I mean, it's really, really up there. It's really, really up there as far as strength, but it's not quite as strong as the other 2. The button lock has its own failure, like I said, so we'll look at that. Like I said, I'm not going to take one apart. Let me see if I've got one that's got a really good visible one. Yeah, here's one for you. Here's one that's easier to see because it's not coated. So this is your lock right here. That post, it's called a plunger. And the failure point on this typically is not going to be the actual lock interface where you've got this radiused area here. Because like I said, it's at a 90, they're opposite directions. They're at a 90-degree angle from each other. The problem you're going to have is that thin spot. See how that is right there? That could bend, and then under here, this is an empty cup. There's a spring under here. So that means that this plunger that you see in here is hollow, and so you can deform that cup. Now, the lock probably won't fail, but it will then cause problems with lock up and lock, what do you call it? With lock rock. So they are weaker because if you were to get tension, now, like I said, if you're using your knife properly, none of this is really going to matter. A lot of it's academic. Like I said, I don't think that this knife is any safer because of its lock than this knife is, because if I'm using this knife properly, I'm not putting any tension on the spine. And even on this one that doesn't have a lock, right, you still have a safety factor, which is that stop point right there. Right? Before it snaps shut on you. So the strength of the lock, like I said, not such a big deal. The factors of this, like the detent that's on this allowed you to flip that like that, is absolutely one of the factors that gives that lock some benefit. Same thing with the frame lock. What's up, Josh? The frame lock allows you to have that detent for the deployment of a flipper. That's one of the reasons that they're so popular. Like I said, this one also has good strong detent, so it allows it to be a flipper. You can actually disengage the lock on this and just swing it open. Really, really cool way to deploy the knife. But in all honesty, the strength of a knife lock really isn't that big of a deal. It really isn't. Like, if you're using your knife properly, that knife's not going to go closed on you. I don't know anyone that is using their knife as a hammer. And if they are, you should take their knife away from them, and they shouldn't be allowed to have it ever, ever, ever again. Now, the next lock that we're going to look at is on this knife right here. And this one, sorry guys, I didn't put my phone on Do Not Disturb. Okay, I'm back. Guys, literally, I will go days without getting a phone call. And if I do a live feed, I'm gonna get a phone call every fucking time. So apologize, I'm back. Is the audio still good? Let me know if the audio is still good. I can't tell if the audio kicked off. Yeah, it was ridiculous. Every time I literally can go a week without getting a phone call. If I do a live feed, I'm going to get a phone call. So at any rate, this is a different type of lock. So this is an axis lock, which is, it doesn't go at an angle. So like we talked about on this swings out and then swings back, which means there's some radius to this. This is perfectly straight up and down this way, and then the lock pressure would get pushed up against this flat surface at that point, right? This is an incredibly strong lock. However, it also means that it doesn't have a lot of detent. There are some that do, but it's really hard. Like if you like to reverse flick a knife, it's kind of hard to do it with something like this. The axis locks a lot of times aren't like your flipper knives. Sometimes they are, they can be. On this one, it's not. Super, super strong. And we're going to talk about why. Because of how it's built. Like I said, see how that just slides forward? And then there's that little horn that engages the lock. We are going to take this apart. This one's a pain. This one is a pain. But I believe that once again, we are using the same two, maybe. Let's see. Is it a T20? It's T20. So instead of a T15, this one's a T20. So we are going to take it apart so I can show you what's inside here. Now, I do have to have my pry bar for this because this one is not as easy. The broccoli skull is here. Yeah, chicken's here somewhere too. I don't know where. Chicken's hanging out over here off to the side. So we take our pivot out here first. Wait. I forget which side I had taken. Let's see here. This one, yeah, this one I need my my larger bit driver. Let me go grab my larger bit driver. My big bit driver. Just because it requires more torque than you can generate with that little small bit driver. So there we go. Yeah, there's a lot of tension in this pivot. So, and I Loctited it because I don't want my pivot to come loose. So you get some Loctite in there. Blue Loctite works really good. It will hold your pivot in place. I put a lot on there. So we got that, and then may as well just these body screws out. Now, Loctited all of these too. The axis lock is a very, very strong lock. It absolutely is. I like this style of axis lock better because it doesn't use two springs, so you can have less chance of failure of the springs, but it is crossbar style. They are very, very, very robust, very strong. I do have to agree with that. This one, oh, there is one more. I thought so. I was like, it doesn't feel like I got all the screws out. So this scale comes off. And then there's the liner in here. Lift this liner off. Now, the key to this, if you take one of these apart, I'm going to tell you right now. The CPL. So let me see here. So this has a little flat spot on it. You got to shift it around. It does pinch in there. And then that's going to prevent, let's see here. Told you I needed the pry bar. Just a little bit of tension on this to, there we go. Pry this up. Okay. So now you can see what's going on inside this lock. So there is no angular motion of this lock. It is straight forward and straight back. Now, if I can keep this, so when that drops across, it goes across that horn, and then it is completely locked in. So you can see right there, that's the surface that touches. There is no radius to this. So the pressure that comes on this comes straight up against this, and it is locked in. That crossbar is locked in there like this. So it can't move at an angle, so therefore it can't go anywhere. Like you could feasibly get it to slip, and there was one idiot that did a really stupid spine whack with this exact style knife, and he did cause a failure. If you do it that way, most locks are going to fail, and I think what had happened was the shock that was induced because he was hitting it so hard allowed the interface between the two to rattle a little bit, and then allow the force to bring it back. So in this, there is no radiused surface. You can see right there, it just simply sits on that. It's a flat piece. And that means that you don't get that weird angle like you do on this, where the lock has to move not back and forth, not straight up and down, but in a curve. Even though it's ever so slightly, that has to move in a curve to engage with the lock because lock interface is curved. You don't get that with that. It is straight forward and back, and the pressure is straight back. And therefore, ooh, sorry, slammed into the tripod. Therefore, that lock is going to be so much more resilient. Much stronger. Now, it does have downside because, like I said, the way this lock is, you've got a softer detent because of the way it doesn't have a detent like a detent ball like the other one. So this is basically your detent. So since it is an angle, a different angle, and this is on a hook, it allows you to disengage that lock and push it out of the way. This way you have to manually disengage it. So, blade weight, I mean, Esparta. You mean the Espada? We're going to look at the Espada. I have the large Espada we're going to look at here in a little bit. But this lock is so much easier. Gerber, I don't like autos, so I think they're ridiculous, and they really don't get you anything, if you want to know the truth. I think autos are stupid. Even the out-to-side autos. Definitely the out-to-front double-action autos. They're too finicky. They just got too much stuff going on with them. So inside that lock, super good. Now, the other axis locks that you're going to see, I have no idea what a trip edge knife is. The other axis locks you're going to see, like on this piece of crap right here that's made by Benchmade that they charge you way, way, way too much for. And guys, there's 61 of you here and no, only 21 likes. So if you're here, drop a like. Triad, yeah, I'm saving it to the end because it's the strongest. This is the same thing. This is the same thing. That bar drops across. It works exactly the same way. It's not as big of a piece, but it works exactly the same way. It's crossbar lock. You can see it drops in and then it drops back just like on this, and then it drops across. It's linear. Now, the thing that this has to its detriment is there's a spring. See that little spring there? There's a spring here. What's going to fail on these locks typically is not going to be the lock itself. It's going to be those two little springs. Because what will happen is people will disengage it from one side predominantly instead of using both posts like they're supposed to. And the spring will actually it's like bending a paper clip. Over time, it's going to give up and break. And so that's been the downfall of a lot of these. This is even more robust in that factor, because if you look, there's only one spring and it goes straight back. So these springs are not hard to find. They're going to be easy to replace. I guarantee you could just find one of these springs. It looks a lot like a ballpoint ink pen. I know it's not. It's much, much stronger. But this is just, I think this is the best possible version of a crossbar lock. And the fact that it is so strong means you get kind of some really good benefits from it. Let's put this back together. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let me get this pivot. Get everything back in the way it's supposed to be. You kind of got to play with this a little bit here to get it back together. Sometimes your best bet is to take some of the tension off the lock. And that did it right there. So, like I said, now you can't induce any linear travel back or angular motion back and forth. It is simply straight forward and back. And that's what makes it so strong. Now, admittedly, there were some guys that were inducing failure into these locks, but that was by how they were testing them. Let's get this put back together and I'm going to show you the benefits and the negatives of this lock. Because like I said, with anything, there's a plus and a minus. That's why the channel is done the way it is. I don't need to put any more Loctite on that. There's still plenty of Loctite on that. Let's get these body screws in. I typically will put the screws in before I start tightening everything down completely to make sure that I've got everything centered and stuff like that. I don't torque everything down, especially not the pivot, until I at least have the body screws in somewhat. They're not completely tight. This knife, you really don't have to worry about it because the way it's constructed, but it's just a habit that I've gotten into, that like making sure that everything is put together properly and then tightening everything down. It's like doing the lugs on your car. You do them in a hex, you know what I mean? A star pattern. So I'll tighten these down all the way, and then I'll see what if I've got any blade play, which I don't. This knife very rarely gets blade play. But the nice thing about this lock, not only is it really strong, not only is it really strong because of the linear engagement of the lock, which is one of the things that the crossbar lock or axis style lock has going for it. The other thing it has going for it is it's completely ambidextrous, as you can tell by the pocket clip being ambidextrous. Technically, I mean, any lock is ambidextrous. This is ambidextrous to a point, and Spyderco is really good about giving you lock options. However, this is truly ambidextrous. I can do that left or right-handed, right? I got oil all over my hands. From the inside of that knife, I got oil and stuff all over my hands from taking these knives apart. Just careful, I don't want to throw it. I got the TV that's on the wall is brand new. It's not brand new, but it's new to the shop. And I really don't want to have to go and replace a TV that I just put up recently. So you can use this lock right or left-handed. Now, super safe, because my lock mechanism, just like the last one, keeps my fingers out of the travel of the blade. However, the detent on these has a tendency to be a little softer, and they are typically thumb roll only, thumb roll style, where you just kind of like roll it out slow, or you can disengage the lock just like with the compression lock and just flip it open like that. Not going to damage anything. I will say that you will over time get some deformation of your stop pin. By slamming it open like that, you can get a little bit of play in that. Typically with this knife, I'll close it that way, but opening it, I roll it. I really don't care about the cool, like flipper knives are fun. They start to have lock rock and blade play and things like that because of how much tension. that don't carry an OTF, I think they're ridiculous. They usually are. Okay, I'm going to tell you about OTFs. The reason I don't like them, I've got one right here. Since somebody's mentioning it, it's not so much the lock. The lock on an OTF is fairly strong. Let me grab this one. It's just sitting back here. There it is. The problem I have with OTFs is the lock on them, yeah, typically super, super strong. They are going to be very, very strong, but they're also really finicky. The mechanism has got too much going on in here. If they get dirty, they don't work. And the other thing too is by the way they're built, they're very restrictive on what kind of blade you get. They're typically thick. They don't cut as well as other knives. A knife like this has a broader blade. I can have this distinct blade shape. It's not on sale for $10, butt fuzz. It's a $350. We haven't seen a knife yet that was below $200. So yeah, this is, you can't get this blade in an OTF. And like I said, really, really finicky. The out the front autos are really finicky. And what'll happen is they'll start to misfire. You got to make sure they're lubed. They're never a comfortable design. Like it's a good looking knife, right? It's a good looking knife. It is a lot of fun. However, it's not comfortable. There's all kinds of weird angles to this. It's sharp in different places. It is ambidextrous. It is one-handed opening. There, you know, legalities of having one of these and carrying it depending on where you're at. Here in San Diego, I can't carry this legally. I can carry all the knives we've already looked at legally. I can carry, hell guys, I carry this legally. That's a 9 1/4 inch knife. This knife right here is 9 1/4 inches. The handle on this is long as 16 3/4 inches. It's not the knife I would typically carry. However, I'm doing a video where I'm going to carry that thing for, I'm going to carry it for, I think I'm shooting for 2 weeks and shoot a video of carrying the Espada XL as a, that's going to be my full-time EDC for a little while. It's going to be my full-time EDC. And I'm like telling you, it's in my pocket right now. That came out of my pocket. Came out of my pocket for that. I had to switch angles. My shoulder hurts. Maryland, you can carry anything as long as it isn't concealed. Here's the thing. I can carry this anywhere I want. I can carry any fixed blade I want as long as it's not concealed. I can carry a folding knife. Concealed. Does not matter. Blade length in San Diego. If I go to LA, absolutely. If you're gonna go check out Fuke Ducey's Espada XL, I have a link to Blade Binge down below. You can go check it out. I just filmed a bunch of stuff with Alex over at Outdoors 55 about Blade Binge. It's going to be in one of his videos. This is a much more reasonable sized Espada. I do have the large Espada. To put things in perspective, this is 12 1/4 inches. That's the XL. 16 3/4 inches. And I'm going to tell you right now, I am very, very surprised at how easy it is to carry that thing. But this is the one I think is going to be the strongest. Now, what do you guys, like the lock mechanism on a knife, you guys' take on it, is it really that important? Because I've said for years it really isn't. If you're using your knife properly, the strength of the lock is not going to matter that much. Some people like a specific lock because of how easy it is to use. This knife easy to use in a lot of scenarios. It's a lot safer than a lot of other knives. This is easy to operate with gloves because of the size of the button and things like that. Flipper knives can be problematic. I'm not gonna lie. I love flipper knives, but having worked construction, no, it's in my pocket. It's in my pocket, Ramon, but I'm also 6'3", 230 pounds, and I wear triple XL gloves. I make a lot of large knives. This knife is 9 1/4 inches. I make a lot of larger knives. Look, but why not? This is a review channel, Butt Fuzz. It's all about knives. It doesn't always have to be about your knife. If you want a channel about your knife, you can put up a video every week about the one knife that you love, but that's not, but why? There's a lot of reasons. I'm gonna tell you right now, camp knife. You can chop and do a lot of stuff with this that you can't with this. I'm just saying, like, it's why? Because it's a knife and it's a knife channel. If I'm wearing a hard hat, I care if the lock is solid. Okay, here's the thing. Are you using your knife as a hammer, Fukdusi? Because I don't know anyone that does. This knife, you probably could use this knife as a hammer if you wanted to, but I'll tell you what you can do with this, and we're going to talk about that with the smaller version of it. You can do a lot of chopping and things with this as if it was a fixed blade. There's a lot of things you can do with this knife and treat it just like a fixed blade that I do have to admit, the other knives you cannot, right? You know what I'm saying? So this is ridiculous for a lot of people. I know a lot, there's a lot of people in South America that still carry, Mexico, South America, they still carry the not the Espadas, the Navaja, which is basically a different version. This is based on the Navaja, and they use it for a lot of tasks. You can get away with having a lot of stuff. Okay, guess what? Bye. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste my time on the fucking trolls anymore. So if you guys haven't noticed, I don't even feature the trolls anymore. I'll give them a little bit, but other than that, they can go watch their wife's boyfriend do untold things to their wife. Cucks is what I'm calling them. But yeah, the lock that is on this allows you to get away with a lot of stuff, which is the next knife we're going to look at, right? Like, okay, I get it. You don't like my knife. Fuck off. Start your own channel about the one knife that you like, that $10 fucking AutoZone knife that is garbage. Just got a Mordax. Worried about the lock. Button locks are great. I'm gonna tell you right now, button locks are great. Just don't spine whack it. They're gonna be great. They have a lot of the same qualities. We talked about that. They have a lot of same qualities as some of the other locks, right? That we're talking about, where it's angular this way. They're not as robust as a couple of the other locks. They are a great lock. So I wouldn't worry about if you have the button lock Mordax. I had one of the old school original Mordax, the frame lock ones. It's great. Do I sharpen blades? Not anymore. I've got too much nerve damage, Vic. So I sharpen my knives, yes, but I don't sharpen customers' knives anymore. Used to. So we're going to take this knife apart so you can see what's in here. And then we're going to talk about some other stuff. We'll turn it around and we can get into the other thing. Because I typically like to do like the second hour of it, just all question and answer stuff. So let's go ahead. I'm going to turn you guys around. And I'm going to tip this down. Maybe we'll give you a steeper angle than before so I can get in here further. So these are super, super strong locks, the Triad lock. And it's simply a back lock, like which you would see, which, don't get me wrong, this is still a super strong lock. It's basically the same lock here with some modifications done to it. So this is something that's going to drop into place into a little keyed slot. Now I can't take this one apart to show you how it works, right? And guys, I would like to remind you, I do try to keep this at least PG. I may drop an F word every once in a while, but I don't like politics. I don't like religion. I don't like it when people are in here harassing other viewers. And so we just don't do politics. We don't do religion. Like my father always used to say, yeah, politics and religion. It's perfectly fine to have your political opinions and your religion. Just treat it like your pecker and don't pull them out in public, because all it's going to do is cause a fight. It's the truest statement it's the truest statement I've heard anyone say. So I believe these are T6, which means I put away this T8. I think is that a T15? No, it's a T10. So we can put this away. It's T10, I believe. So, yeah, it's T10. So T10 and a T6. I'm going to grab my bowl again. Now, T6 screws, I will tell you, T6 screws do have a tendency to strip out. Not the threads. It's not that the thread is any different, because they're usually 2 and 56 thread. What you wind up with is, in case you guys don't know, no, I'm not even going to do it. So these are T6 screws. What happens is the head has a tendency to strip out. So I'm always really cautious. So I'm going to take these screws out. Now, this is a very strong, the way this is put together is really, really good. So I don't think I have to worry about it. And these screws are not steel. Surprisingly, these are titanium screws in the budget version of this knife. And they are long screws. So they're really, really far in there. I've had way too much caffeine today. Like I said, I've been up since like 4 o'clock this morning. So, and then get this pivot out. Now, the thing about this lock that makes it so strong isn't that it's that much different than the lock that is in that Spyderco Police that I just showed you guys. What is that? I put enough Loctite in there that it came out and I thought it was a piece of the G10 had broke off. It was not. It was simply the Loctite that I put in there to keep it from coming loose. This is a heavy blade. It's a heavy, heavy blade, and it definitely can cause your pivot to come loose. So really simple here. Get this piece off here. This is dirty. This knife gets carried. There we go. So this is what you've got here. Right? Spring, drop arm bar, a dropping lock bar, I should say. And then that's your pivot pin for your lock, pivot screw here. This cutout here is what your lock drops into. And you can see here how much of that lock is pinched in here. It is almost impossible unless you push this up, because this is kind of hooked in. So you can see they kind of do this. You can see it. It's kind of radiused in both directions, so it kind of locks in. That will continue to drop in further, but what happens is this pin is what makes the big difference in this. This accepts force of the blade coming this way and the force of the lock going this way. So no matter what you've got going on, when you impact this blade, like if you're chopping, that stops that backward motion of the blade. So you have no chance this lock is going to slip, and it's pinched in there about that much. So you see it's kind of hooked in there at an angle. So while it is like 90 degrees this way, but when you look at it from the way it's at an angle on both sides. So it is hooked in there and they're holding each other, and there's a lot of travel for this blade. But this pin accepts an insane amount of force. And because it's all locked in between, you know, it's pinched in there, it's only up and down travel. So no matter what you do, let's see here, I didn't get that part in there. There we go. No matter what you do, hey, Winston Cobretti. Do I need any new gear for review? Bro, I've still got some of your stuff that's been here for almost a year. You got to come down and get, look, Winston. You've never even used this. This has been at my house. It came straight from the guys at Jack Wolf Knives. You've never even used it. It's been here for the better part of a year. You need to come to my house and pick this up. Or text me your address and I'll send it back to you. So even if you happen to slam the spine on this and you force things this way, this pin stops it all dead, right? It stops all of it dead. This pin, this addition of this pin makes this such a stronger lock. This is the closest you're ever going to get to a fixed blade. It's not a year. He was supposed to come and pick it up, and he just keeps, I've offered to send it back to him several times. So Mike, don't make it out like this is my fault. And by the way, Winston Cobretti dropping a super chat. I didn't forget. If you drop a super chat, you get the bell. So I don't have a dainty little bell. Ding, ding. So yeah, a really good change on what was already a very classic lock style. That back lock has been around for a very, very long time. Just that addition of this pin and then the depth of this dropping in gives you an incredibly strong lock. These knives are the only knives with a Triad lock are the only knives that I would say I don't think you could really make it fail. I think that these Triad locks routinely in testing from a dead weight hang will hold like 800 pounds on the if I remember right, on the Espada XL, you're talking like 800 pounds that this thing will hold at the, behind the lock right here, 800 pounds right on the pivot. So an AutoZone knife. Yeah. Old boy that was in here commenting, we could use his knife as a striker. That's about all it would be good for. Sorry guys, I'm fed up with the trolls. But the fact that this works like this and allows it in, if I sent you a knife, it wasn't here for sharpening, it was here for review, Mike. And I don't do sharpening anymore. Typically it would take me about a month to get, okay, Mike, let me explain. Here, hang on. Here's the deal. Winston is one of my paying members, and he comes down to San Diego occasionally. I'll give you the backstory on this. He had that knife sent to me on at least 4 different occasions. I have asked him, I was like, are you coming down? He said he would get it the next time he came down. Last time he came down, he forgot it. It wasn't here for sharpening. It was simply here for review. It's not even cut anything, except like a couple pieces of paper. It came here directly, shipped directly to me for review, then he was going to pick it up, right? He came down, he didn't pick it up. Every time he said he was going to come down, I have offered to mail him his knife. I have offered to mail him his knife at least 5 times. And every time he's been like, nah, I'll get it next time I come down. So don't make this out that this is me. This was not me. I did not keep this man's knife here intentionally for a year. It's not like I had sharpened it and then just never sent it back. His knife has been sitting here because he told me not to send it to him. So, other Mike, it's not me. Absolutely not me. I'm not sharpening knives anymore. I didn't sharpen that knife. I have enough nerve damage and stuff in my hand, in my arm and hand. I can't sharpen the way I feel comfortable. Like, I just don't feel like I'm doing as good a job. And so if I can't do it exactly the way that I think it should be done, I'm just not doing it anymore. So I don't offer sharpening service anymore. So that's just how I do it. But the knife came for review, not for sharpening. It's never even been sharpened. It's never been used. So let's get back to this. Yeah, that pin in there, accepting force both directions, just really is a game changer on how strong that lock is. And the fact it is so simple, like, it simply is one of the simplest lock mechanisms that's out there. It's just an old school back lock with an additional pin. So having that extra lock allows you to do some stuff. Having that addition to this allows you to do some stuff with this knife that you can't do with a lot of other folding knives. This is one of the few knives that I would say you could do like batoning and chopping and things like that, where other knives, the impact would cause issues with the lock, right? It would cause issues. The lock would start to fail. You'd get failure to lock up and things like that. This is not that case. Let's see here. There we go. Got that back in there. And the fact that it is that simple means it's easy to take apart and put back together. There's not a lot going on. What's my favorite knife lock? To be honest, it depends on what I'm doing with the knife. But if I had to pick a lock that I think is just about the all-around Leo, would be this compression lock. You get the benefits of that detent that you can do a flipper on, that sometimes the other locks fail at, the ease of use, the safety, and it's a super, super strong lock. Compression lock is probably one of my favorite locks. Right up there with Microtech's version of the crossbar lock. No, Dixon, you are not. I'm not doing any serrated blades. How much are you willing to pay? Tell me what your maximum is, and it will be $50 more than that. Whatever it is that you're willing to pay, it's going to be $50 more than that. And if $50 more than that is not enough, it'll be $100 more than that. Now, I do have, here's the thing, I have another screw. I'm not sharpening serrated knives. It's not a moldy chia pet. That's broccoli skull. Don't turn into a troll, Mike, or you're going to be asked to escort the premises. Okay, here's the thing. I don't like those locks, and I don't really find, okay, here. I don't like these. They might be really super strong, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't like them. You know why? Because they get in the way. They get in the way, and I don't find them to be any different than this. That's in the fucking way. So they kind of fall into this category. But they're extra heavy, they're extra large. They basically wind up being real similar to the crossbar lock. And I don't like the Atlas lock, the Shark lock, or that, because it just gets in the way. Oh no, it was, Mike, that was a joke. It was a joke. It's broccoli skull. So the stuff you see up here, all this stuff, this was gifts from, these were all either gifts from subscribers or friends of mine and stuff that winds up on the channel. Like broccoli skull was, these beads, these really intricate beads, these were gifts from a subscriber called Frank. These are lanyard beads that came from him as a gift. Stuff like this. The rubber chicken came as a gift. All that stuff, all the stuff that sits, all the goofy stuff that's up here sits as gifts. And then I do have some of my challenge coins. I was on Iwo Jima in 1995 for the 50th anniversary. My grandfather was also there. My grandfather got one of these coins. My grandfather was there during the war, and I went after I joined the Navy, and I was there for the ceremony. And so I got the Reunion of Honor coin. This is forged. This was made with the black sands of Iwo Jima. They used it for the casting. I don't like the Atlas. So Fukdusi, I had 2 knives come in with the Atlas lock, and I don't like it. I just don't like them. So at any rate, let's get this pivot screw put back in. Oh, I was saying is I have to be careful because there's a screw that came out of something, and I don't know what it is. Oh, I guess I don't have to be careful. It's a Phillips. That's trash then. I don't even need that. I was like, that's the first time I've looked at it. I found a screw here in the shop, and I put it in my little magnetic bowl. And I was like, oh, I'll eventually figure out what that came out of. But with it being a Phillips, it means it may have come out of an Emerson, which means I don't own an Emerson, so who knows? I don't know what that screw came out of. I have a screw loose, or a loose screw. That's too much pivot tension. The thing with some of these knives is that you've got to be really, that's still too much. they can be finicky on how much, pivot tension you want to put on them. Now, I got all my lubricants and stuff out because I was going to lubricate those knives before I put them back together, and I did not. I did not at all. So yeah, that puts us right where I was gonna be at, and I was like, okay, we can talk about some of the locks and stuff like that. Now, like I said, the lock mechanism can give it some inherent, you can't have a Triad lock that's a flipper. You can thumb roll them, even on this big, on the large one. I can even do it on the XL. There you go. You can thumb roll it out. So, spit is nature's lube. There's a girl that I dated one time that had me put it in an orifice that's not what it's made for, and I think she would disagree that spit was an adequate lubricant. I don't think it was. Like I said, the lock itself can have some inherent, qualities that make it more, enticing for specific people. Like I said, I like flippers. I like being able to reverse flick. I can't do that with some of the other knives. The compression lock basically winds up being really, really good for most of that stuff. So you get like the best of everything out of like this compression lock. You still have the detent for a flipper, but you can also slow roll it. It is one of those ones where you can just disengage the lock like you can in the axle, which is why this is so good. And even though it's not the strongest of the three, it's the weakest of the three in my opinion, because it still does have that kind of linear radius area. I can't flip this knife. It just does not have the detent because of the way it's built. It doesn't have a detent ball. This does. So you still have that, and you can definitely flip that. I don't foresee any problems with this lock failing because, like I said, I don't use my knife as a hammer. I've never decided I was going to tap something with the back of my knife. There are tools for that. If I need to give something a light tap, I have a minor adjustment tool, right? I have a fine adjustment tool right here. I have a very, very fine, very, very small ball peen hammer. I'm not going to use the back of my knife. And if I was going to use my knife, if it was an emergency and I had to hit something with my knife, I'm going to use this part of it right here. I'm not going to use the back and like, oh, let's go ahead and just use this like a hammer. And then you wind up with stitches. As cutting board knife review did, because he's an idiot. I typically don't like to call people out, but I'm going to continue to call him out because he is an idiot. I saw the way he tested this lock, and the way he tested it, I was like, that's going to fail. And he's going to hurt himself. He had a hold of this knife like this. He had gloves on. He was swinging this thing like he was trying to drive a nail. And on like the third one, it slipped. And I was like, I saw that coming. You can force any of these locks to fail. You absolutely can force any of these locks to fail. It's just the common sense factor of like how you're testing and things like that. Like this, that is a spine, that is a valid spine test. But the best test of a lock is going to be simply holding the knife like this and putting pressure in opposing directions on that. And if you feel the lock start to slip, stop. If you feel that lock start to slide a little bit, stop. And then get a hold of the manufacturer. Be like, hey, this lock is slipping. Jared Neves over at Neves Knives cut himself pretty badly doing exactly what I was talking about. Get your fingers out of the way like this. Push away, like try to fold it in half. The same motion that you would do to close this knife. If you feel the lock start to slip, there's something wrong with the lock interface. That lock could fail. That lock will fail. If you can feel it start to slip, that lock will fail. It's going to. There is no it could, it may. Hang on a second. I'm trying to see here. I got a text message. Okay, at any rate. There we go. It was my buddy Paulie. Yeah, hit the thumbs up. So you can make any lock fail on a knife. You can make anything fail if you try hard enough. I saw a guy, here's a stupid one. I saw a guy put this exact knife. He goes, this lock, and he like Scab over at Choir Boys Cutlery did it as a joke. But this guy literally took a stick and was smacking this. You go, see, lock failed. And I'm like, yeah, of course it did. You hit it with a bat. A little bat, but still. You hit it with a stick. What did you think was going to happen? That's not how you test a knife. I am done. I'm so done with, and a lot of it, I'm not going to lie to you, a lot of it is Lynn Thompson's fault. When they started testing the Triad locks and doing those crazy over-the-top tests that they were doing with their knives, they started this trend of people like, oh, that lock failed. That's not what that lock is meant for. That lock was not meant to be a structural element. Like, they test those locks by holding hundreds and hundreds of pounds. I was like, well, it's not a fastener. It's not like a structural element you're using to hold up a structure. It's not a piece of metal that you're using to hold up a structure. It's not an angle bracket. It's not an I-beam. It's not meant for that. It is meant for cutting. And if you need your knife to hold 800 pounds behind the pivot, behind the lock, while it's clamped in, and you can hold 800 pounds on the XL. Yeah, it's a big knife. 800 pounds this thing will hold. What do you need that for? I will say, like I said, the fact that that lock is that robust means that there are things you can do with this lock, with this knife, and that lock mechanism that you can do with nothing else on the market, right? The chopping and things you can do with this, you're not going to hurt this lock. You could damage. Cold Steel does a test on a video where they lock this in a vise and they cut a little groove here and they hung 800 pounds on this and the lock held. Like it basically is the toughest, strongest lock on the market. And I absolutely agree with that. I don't think that you need that, but the fact is, like I said, with the lock on this being so strong, you can do things you can't do with other knives. I could take this absolutely and chop with it like it was a fixed blade. Sorry, I was doing some channel moderation. I saw somebody put something up or took something down or hid someone, and I was like, well, what did they do? So if you guys know, I do have moderators. Raccoon Sex Dungeon and some of the other guys, they're channel moderators. And so they will take messages and hold them and put them like so that no one can see it. And depending on what's going on with that message, I may decide to block someone for the channel for a period of 24 hours or completely. So thank you very much, Raccoon Sex Dungeon, and my other moderators. I really appreciate it. You guys do a lot and you don't get paid for it. I mean, if I got paid to do this, really, I would do it too. Take a fixie. I'm just saying, like, okay, typically I would agree with you. Typically, Fukudusi, I would agree with you. 9 times out of 10, I agree with you. However, this would be the fixed blade I would take. Let me give you my case for this. This knife weighs half of what this weighs, right? I can do a lot of chopping with this. Work Tough Gear Grizzly. I'm not giving up much on blade length. I'm not giving up much on cutting surface. And this is half the weight, and I don't have to wear it on my belt. I can simply stick this in my pocket because it carries very, very comfortably. Or I can throw it in my backpack where it's not in the way. This, in my opinion, while it is very, very good, is still too heavy, and it gets used a lot. You can see there's a lot of wear pattern on this where I had to clean up. This thing will give you the chopping ability you can in a lot of these fixed blades. The fact is, this thing is a lot lighter. I don't give up much, and there's things I can do with this in a campsite scenario that I can't do with this because of the blade shape, and simply adding these two together, a good camp hatchet and this, gets you way farther than just having the work tough. And I have the same weight. I've tested it. They are only off by a little bit. I have the same weight and more capability. Like hiking, every ounce counts. If I'm going to carry that much weight, why not carry something that's built for chopping, something that I can use for other tasks that doesn't weigh as much? And technically, the handholds on this, I have a better grip. I can use this for planing. I can use this for a lot of stuff. I've been doing some kitchen tasks with this. It's got a lot going for it. It's a thinner cutting profile. I've now got two things that I can carry for the weight of one. Basically two for the price of one if you're looking at the weight of stuff you're carrying for hiking and camping. So flat ground, it's a nice broad flat grind. It's not super thick. Now, is this going to be as robust for chopping? No, but that's what I'm saying. I can put this and this together at the same weight point as the larger knife that doesn't do either one as well. It's a great knife. It's kind of thick. It's good for chopping, not as good as this. It's good for cutting, not as good as this. I now have two tools that are purpose-built. I have a cutting tool and a chopping tool. Now, this can be a little bit big. I'm going to tell you right now, I think that this is the more optimal size. This thing is an almost perfect day-to-day carry. It's 12¼ inches, but it's not hard to use. It's easily balanced. It's so light compared to the size. And you don't give up a lot in it. You still have the Triad lock. So there's a lot of reasons to have a big folding knife. If you're on a farm, it does have a pocket clip. Joe Kaka. This came out of my pocket. This is currently, for the purposes of a video for research, my primary carry. It is in my pocket, right there. I'm literally trying to see, like, does this, now you do have to be careful, especially wearing I'm wearing these aren't cheap. These things, this lavalier mic that is wired to the transmitter, I was just very, very careful. They're almost $100. I've cut cords by accident with that knife. I was doing something out here. I was doing a video out here the other day, and I had my voiceover mic cord, like the can mic. I used it for some voiceover stuff, and I didn't get the cords all put away, and I was messing with this knife, and I snapped it shut. And I looked at a piece of cord, I saw something fall, and I looked, and I had cut that much off of a, luckily it wasn't like a hardwired cord, but it was definitely like a plug cord like this, like a headphone cord. It was a male to male. And I was like, shit, male to male. Docking. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. Yeah, I absolutely love this thing. It's crazy. But the fact it does carry so easily is also amazing. Like, Cold Steel really got it right with this one. I have a feeling, like, I've seen the large Espada and S35VN with the polished aluminum and the micarta. It's bigger, it's bulkier, it's heavier. I have a feeling that I would not like the more expensive version is. I think that this cheaper version is better for me. I'm not throwing anything at the wall. Fuck you need to, I just told you, like, B. Wayne, this is a great camp knife. This one is in AUS 10. Now, this is not something that most people are going to use on a day-to-day basis. I'm simply carrying it every day to research a video. Can you carry this? How useful is a 16 3/4 inch knife? And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed at how versatile this is, even as big as it is. Now, I will tell you, if you're carrying that thing, you've got to have a smaller knife. I've been carrying that and this Sweetwater Creek Senator with stag handles, just a nice little slip joint. I've pretty much been able to do what I would do day to day with those two knives. This is just a really good all-around knife. I've got that one for like any big cutting I would do. Would be great. Are K-bars good knives? Somebody asked. I think they could be better. They have a good history. They're a company that has been around for a long time. I personally think they're running their steel too hard. That's why they're having failures. That's why knives break. That's why blades chip. That's why they're harder to sharpen than they need to be. And for something like what a Marine's going to be doing, you want something with a little bit more. You want something that's got a bit more resilience. Now, 1095 can be a great steel. 1095 is a great steel. It honestly is, if you heat treat it properly, which that's the problem. I don't think if that's what, I can't remember what they're making their knives out of, but if it is in 1095, then they're running it too hard. I looked it up one time and I was trying to, guys, I apologize if I seem like uncomfortable, but I'm wearing a heart monitor and have been for like the last week, and it's uncomfortable. It's itchy, and it's really starting to get to where it's starting to bother me. Can you see? I'm wearing a heart monitor that is attached to me, and it's been on there. It's been on there for, tomorrow will be 7 days, and I have to wear it for 14 total, and it's uncomfortable. No matter how you move, the tape pulls, and it pulls my chest hair because there's chest hair stuck under it. I don't have a lot of chest hair after I got that autoimmune disorder, and they put me on chemotherapy, one of the chemotherapy drug cocktails that made all my hair fall out, but it's really itchy. I know it's random, but I wanted to move to Italy. Is it worth moving there? I don't know. I've been to Italy like one time. There's a lot of stuff that you can do with a big knife. I've found that out. There's stuff I can do with this knife I could not have done with the smaller knife. Trying to see here. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff you can do with this you couldn't do with a smaller knife. But the fact that it's really well balanced is surprising. When you've got it in this grip, it is super, super comfortable. On a farm, if you wanted something that you could chop with, but still be able to get on it and do like some heavy tasks, you really could. I like I said, I think that the 16 3/4 inch version is a bit over the top. This one is great. Super, 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 super functional. The balance on this one is just about perfect. And that's what makes this so good. This one at 12 1/4 inches overall is still really, really easy to use. You've got a nice radius blade. You can do a lot of sweeping cuts on stuff. This thing is a really good cutter because you've got all that force you can generate because of the big handle. And the fact it's big, and me being a big guy, like I said, I'm 6'3", triple XL size gloves. It's comfortable. I don't feel cramped at all on this knife. I mean, how could you? Look how much look how much handle is left. I can get anywhere on this I want. And then doing things like, I was cutting onions with this and the big version, the XL version. I cut some onions up with it. I was like, it's surprisingly good at those tasks because it's not so super thick. So you've got a fairly decent thick blade stock, but it transitions nice and wide. So you get a really good behind the edge on this. And I like the AUS 10. Cold Steel is one of those companies that has typically gotten the most out of some what would be considered substandard steels. Their AUS 10 was great. They had the, I don't like CTS XHP. I don't like it. It's just not a steel I like. Sorry, doing some channel management stuff here. It's not a steel I like. I don't like XHP. And so what was the spine thick? I have to, hang on a second. Blade stock thickness. 3.7 millimeters. Hang on a second, I got the wealth of human knowledge at my fingertips. All right, hang on. What is 3.7 millimeters in inches?
0.15
Yeah,
inches.
yeah, 0.15. So 0.15 blade stock thickness. So it's not super thick, right? Same thickness on the extra large one. So not super thick blade stock thickness, but it's still, you know, that's a pretty good size blade stock thickness. The broader the blade, the broader the blade, the more transition time you have, which means that this just winds up having a super I usually do, because I was making knives, so I usually, because you order steel dimensionally by the thickness in a decimal, like 1 point whatever. I usually don't do fractions anymore. It is easier to remember stuff like that. But yeah, I think this winds up being about the optimal behind the edge thickness and stuff like this on this knife. So, but like I said, Cold Steel was famous. I don't like XHP. Cold Steel had some of the best XHP ever. I'm not a big fan of AUS 8 typically, but Cold Steel did their AUS 8 incredibly well. Their AUS 8 was really, really good. Their AUS 8A. And they've been one of those companies that just maximizes what you can get out of steels that would be considered substandard. Even this, I'm not a fan of CTS BD1. It's not BD1N, it's just CTS BD1 on the Voyager, another knife with the Triad lock. And it's a very good steel from Cold Steel. Like when it came, I was like, I hate BD1. It just doesn't have a lot of the qualities I like, but they got really good qualities out of steel. And it's always been surprising. It's always been surprising what certain companies get away with heat treat and getting it right. I'm just putting that research in. Another company that does heat treat really, really well. Proprietary, what do you mean? BD1? CTS BD1. It's a commercially available steel. It's not proprietary with Cold Steel. Kunwu. Every knife I've ever gotten from Kunwu, this one is in Elmax. This is the Kunwu Django XL. Their heat treat has been stellar. I've had 3 knives come from them, and they were all in different steels. And this one is mine. But they have all been the best heat treat on this. This is the best production heat treat I've ever had on Elmax. This is the best heat treat on Elmax. Super good behind the edge thickness. This is another one that has a crossbar lock that is just way better than Benchmade. I haven't got to try the Stone Hands. I have not had any of the 15V stuff. I will tell you that my military too is in crew wear. This is the Crew Carta. Crewware and micarta. This is the best heat. This is the best. Look at, see those lines on that? This knife gets used a ton. It still has a factory edge on it. I got this in April of last year. It's coming up on a year, factory edge still. And it still is shaving sharp. So to put that in perspective for you guys, when you use a knife enough that you see like those lines across it where it's been used to cut cardboard and things like that, you typically have already had to sharpen it a few times. That's still, here. Just so you guys can see for your own eyes, that is still the factory edge on that. It's been stropped. I'm not gonna lie, it has been stropped a couple times, but it hasn't been sharpened. Crewware is some tough shit. Yeah, you're absolutely right. With steels, I was talking about this with Chris and Elliot. There's some steels out there that people really love, and I'm not over the moon with. The new one is the MagnaCut, and everybody's all over it because it's just across the board. It's like a straight line across the board. But for me, it's straight line across the board. Meh. Yeah, it's got okay edge retention. It's got okay, like all the things it's got, it doesn't do any one thing really well. And I don't like the way it sharpens. So it's pretty good. This, when you find a steel that really does something well, like the edge retention on this and some of the other factors, the edge it takes and things like that, you wind up giving up something. Like when you find a steel that takes that really insane nuts edge because the way the carbides are done and the way they're distributed, and they're not too small and too fine, and then the wear resistance and things like that, a lot of times you wind up giving up something. Like if you breathe on it wrong, it rusts. It's kind of true with this. This does rust. Now, S90V, I think, is just one of the best all-around steels. This one is in S90V. This knife gets used a lot as well. So I don't know what the 15V is all about, but I think at this point I found the steels I like, and I'm going to kind of stick with them. And the fact is, a lot of times they wind up being on the cheaper spectrum. They really do. I really have found some steels I love and gravitated back to Alex Steingraber's S90V. Or I'm sorry, Alex Steinberger's Crewware. Right here. You do have to wax it, oil it, and things like that. It's insane. I want the steels that give me a specific edge. I have found the steels that do exactly what I want. Crewware, 20CV, S90V, LMAX, 14C28N. A couple of those are, you know, more expensive versions. LMAX isn't cheap. LMAX gives me the edge I want. Crewware absolutely gives me the edge I want. I'm not giving up anything on that except a little bit of corrosion resistance. 14C28N, things like that. I have really gotten to the point where there's so many of these steels that have come out that I'm like, why? Like, they don't work really well for what I want. I want a specific edge. I want to be able to sharpen it. I want that specific feel of the edge, how it holds its edge, how it cuts. That's the big one, is how does it cut? Like, you can get something razor sharp and hair popping sharp, but it doesn't cut well. And when I say it doesn't cut well, is it feels slick. I have that problem with MagnaCut. The grain structure is so fine that the carbides are small. They're tiny, right? And they're so fine. Yeah, they're evenly distributed, but they're not the big angular ones that really are aggressive at the edge when you get into higher grit. So what happens is you wind up with a knife that when you sharpen it above 1,000 grit, which I personally like the way a higher grit edge cuts, you wind up not having that aggressive edge above 1,000. It feels slick. S35VN feels that way. Some of those steels don't have the big, obtuse, angular carbides like you get in some other steels. And therefore, when you take it up to, like this one is, I believe, at 8,000 grit, this is still super aggressive. The edge on this is super aggressive. It still cuts line, and it bites in, and it does the things you want it to do. And the reason I say that is the friction you get with a coarser edge to accomplish that on some of these finer steels, when you're at like 600 to 800 grit, right? Yes, they're aggressive, but then you have other factors of, I used to make knives. You wind up with other factors of that scratch pattern now that it's aggressive, but it also causes friction, which means that you're, it means that you're adding friction to that edge. I've never cut anyone with a knife. I've cut a lot of other stuff. And if you're the kind of person that only looks at a knife as a weapon, then you're really limiting yourself. So that finer grain structure would be really good for woodworking tools where you want a fine surface finish. But if I'm cutting line and things like that, that's not what I want. I don't want it to feel slick, but I also want to have the way things cut be the way I want. So you do get friction at a coarser edge. Well, flesh, that's true. If you're a butcher, that's true. Typically for butcher knives, I'm going to have a coarser edge on a butcher knife. I really would, because it usually winds up being more versatile that way. Sorry, I'm just used to trolls coming in here. I guess you're right. I'm used to trolls coming in and just making it miserable for everyone. That's one of the things that typically the trolls would say. I mean, there's a case for carrying a knife as a self-defense item, but like I can use this as a tool or for self-defense. So, you know, it just depends on what you want to do with a knife. If like you're just cutting paper and cardboard and stuff, it might not, you might not, you know, it might not really matter to you. But for me, you know, I have a specific edge I want for the day-to-day tasks that I do. And over the years, I've gotten that, and I know what it should feel like, and I know what it's going to cut like. And that way, that's why I'm kind of sticking with specific steels. What is the best knife? Who asked that? I saw somebody ask that. What is the best knife? So this is currently the knife that I think is the best knife on the market right now. This is the Amphibian from Microtech Knives. It's just an all-around, almost perfect knife for what I think. Like carry-wise, the way it feels in hand, the way it cuts, overall blade dimension, you know, and shape, behind the edge thickness, day-to-day tasks, doing like little stuff, and but still being something that is reliable, comfortable, and things like that. Now, if I had to pick like what is probably the best knife overall that I own, would be, there's kind of a toss-up between two knives. One of them, and I don't do it very often, but we are going to get a plug. This is my knife design. This is the Sea Snake. This is a small little day-to-day fixed blade. Small little fixed blade Warrenclyffe that you can carry. No money, 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 but I hate fucking stupid people, so guess what? Bye. Retard. Some of my fucking best friends are fucking black folk. I was in the military. You can't be racist if you're in the military. I don't give a fuck what color the hand is that was pulling me out of a fucking fire or a Humvee. This is a great knife for day-to-day use. Just a great, great knife. Not just doing it. You can pick these up with like down below. I think I have a link to these specifically, but you can also go to Artisan, and with my link with Artisan, you can pick these up. These are like 50 bucks, or you can use my Amazon store and pick them up on Amazon. I get paid twice. At any rate, I have a link to Artisan Cutlery where they have these. You will have to buy the loops to carry it, scout carry. So between that and this, this is, hey, what's up, Peterbilt Knife Guy? What's up? This is an incredible knife. This is a custom Lon Humphrey Tucson. Probably the best fixed blade for this style fixed blade. It really is. This thing's great. It's AEBL. And it's just an incredible knife. And these aren't that expensive. You can get this exact knife for Under 350, full custom. I mean, that is a full custom knife, under 350, and it's going to be on Knife Ship Free. I think Knife Ship Free is the only place he has these other than his own website. I have a link to Knife Ship Free down below. Just look up Lon Humphrey Custom Knives. But if you're looking for something you're gonna, you don't cut metals with a knife. I think this is better than Bark River. The Bark River knives are good, but more for bushcraft. They don't fit my purpose for a lot of stuff. This really just fits my everyday needs. No. You go. There you go for an edit. This is just a good all-around awesome, awesome knife. So, I mean, you could. Hey, guess what, troll? Fuck off. What the hell? Yeah, super, super comfortable to carry. This is just about one of the best knives out there. And I mean, like, I'm a knife designer. And the thing about this is just an old school frontier knife. And so for the money you're paying, this thing is great. But then when you like it's an attractive knife. This is a very, very attractive knife. So you've got this burl handle, this red burl handle with a blue liner. And it is so ridiculously sharp. Like, just ridiculous the edge it takes. Because, I mean, it is a custom, it's a custom heat treat. What does AEBL steel do best? I'm typically not a fan of AEBL. So this is the first knife I've had in AEBL that I actually really do like. Typically, I'm not a fan of the steel. It just doesn't have the qualities I want. But the heat treat on this, like, heat treat is a very important factor. If you don't get your heat treat right, the knife's not going to be great. The heat treat on this is amazing. And you can see this knife's been used enough that, can you see the area behind the edge where it's polished from being stropped? There you go, 52-100. That's basically what I couldn't remember. Big Brown Bear did a video about it. Plenipotent, no, I have not. Here's the thing. I'm not a bushcrafter, so I'm not into bushcraft knives. I am, however, a country boy that would go out and be on the farm for a day. Most of the stuff I'm going to be doing is not bushcraft stuff. It's going to be outdoors stuff. And a lot of times the bushcraft blades don't work as well for, like, overall purposes. And so this does. There are some factors for these bushcraft knives. They happen to be a little bit thicker. Have I shaved my beard with a knife? Go check it out. One of the first videos I did on this channel, I shaved with a tomahawk. So yes, I have shaved my beard with a knife multiple times on this channel. Yeah, but as far as all around just a great knife, this would be the one. Guys, I think I'm going to end this. My shoulder really, really hurts. And I've become uncomfortable. And I apologize. I know that there's still like 41 of you guys here. Well, maybe I can just talk. If you guys got questions, we can do question and answer. But I'm tired of holding stuff up. My shoulder really hurts. We are probably going to have to do surgery on this. I'm trying to put it off. ADCR. ADCR is another really great steel. This is a great knife. What happened to Steel Will? I don't know what happened with Steel Will. I don't know. I really do like their knives. They just kind of just fell off. This is another great knife, and this one is in ADCR. ADCR V2 is one of those steels that's kind of like problematic. It's one of those really impact resistant steels, but not edge resistant. You know what I mean? But this is that TKL Night Guard. I will say this knife came the sharpest of any knife I've ever had. Is a diamond blade knife? No, it's not possible. It's too brittle. It's too problematic. You just get, you would have to make a, there's just no way to do it. The problem with this is it doesn't hold its edge really well, and I am going to have to sharpen this. So the edge retention on it's not great. Impact resistant would be great. Like if you're stabbing into stuff, much less chance you're going to damage this knife. But, pardon me, the edge retention isn't great. It does strop up nicely though. So that's the thing. I'm going to see if I can get this to strop back up to where I want it. I have another really big knife in AEBL, or not AEBL, but ADCR, that's the word I was looking for. Outdoor use, yes, it's a very good steel for outdoor use. It's really rust resistant. It's got pretty good edge retention, and like if the heat treat's really good on it, like it is on this one, you get the kind of edge I want, like an aggressive edge. Even at, I think this is at 4,000 grit, 5,000 grit, I mean. So it's a fairly fine. Yeah, I think this was 5,000 grit. And it's still aggressive. So absolutely love this knife. Guys, I carry a fixed blade almost every day. This is the one I carry. It gets a lot of carry. I mean, I'm in the city, but this is still just, I can't get over. Like, for as ridiculous as this is, and people are calling it stupid, for some people it might be, but like it's not like when you think a big knife like that is not going to have some of the qualities, you can do like a lot of times a knife like this would be too thick, right? It's not. It's just so good, but it's also not too thin behind the edge. It's like I said, Cold Steel gets a lot of shit, right? Cold Steel is a company that gets a lot of shit for the over-the-top stuff. But the fact is, you can't argue with the quality of what they're putting out and how functional they are. Like, it's not, no, absolutely not. Do not have any Philly Eagles knives. Not sound like a jackass, but I have to tell you, Eagles fans are like the worst fans. They really are. So yeah, there's a lot of things that Cold Steel has just been like, oh, Lynn Thompson doesn't know what he's doing. His knives are always amazing. I've yet to have a bad Cold Steel knife. I've had Cold Steel knives that weren't my type of knife, but they weren't bad. And I mean, when you really look at it, I've owned more Cold Steel knives than any other brand. And I'm like, they have some quality issues sometimes, some quality control issues. Things leave the factory with little minor issues. Neither one of these is perfect. They've got some mixed grade. What's the weight on the Cold Steel? Which one? So the large one is this is 9.2 ounces, which 12 and a quarter inches overall. It's not a horrible weight, but it's really well balanced and it carries in the pocket really well. Its big brother is 14.8 ounces. What are you eating, dog? What do you got? What do you got in your mouth, huh? What did you get into? Let me see. How did you get a fucking tissue? Jackass. Like a tissue in his mouth. Where did you even get that? Where did you even get that? So I mean, it's heavy, but the balance on it is not bad. Hey, guess what? I reported you for being fucking stupid. These knives are not illegal, dumbass. So when you have something that's this big, you would expect it to be way heavier. Now, I do know that the other one, the other version of this is much heavier with the micarta and all that. And to tell you the truth, it really didn't, like, I could have gotten it when I got this one, the large, and then I got the XL because I wanted to do a comparison video, but it's much heavier because of my micarta and all that stuff. But these are AUS 10, both of them. And they came like shaven sharp, like they are razor sharp from the factory. So yeah, it's been interesting to actually carry these massive knives. And like I said, this is not a little knife either. This is 12 1/4 overall inches, 12 1/4 overall length with a, what is this? A 5.5 inch blade on this, right? This is 5.5, and the bigger one is 7.5 inch blade. This thing's just, this is a beast. This is a good farm knife. This is a good farm knife. Like opening boxes, opening feed bags, and just working on the farm and having a nice, bigger blade, larger surface area to do stuff with. It would come in handy, and it does carry very easily, very, very easily. Even this one, like I said, stupid how good that carries. Now, like I said, there's a case to be made that, like, if you want something this big, you should have a fixed blade, right? There are some other things with this. The multiple grips on this and positioning to allow yourself certain things. Now, Lynn Thompson will tell you that all of his knives are based on fighting, and now you've got like more distance from you to the target. You know what I mean? So it's, there's a lot of things going for it, but you're not going to ever argue that their locks aren't strong. Even, you know what, even Cold Steel's old, where'd they go? This was the first knife I ever got that had a liner lock that was worth a crap. It really was. The liner locks used to be trash. This is a really strong liner lock, and it's because they rolled that over and gave it more of a surface. How often should you sharpen a knife? If you don't use it, you probably won't ever have to sharpen it. How often should you sharpen a knife? When it gets dull. Like, that's going to be a different thing for everyone. If you use this knife daily to cut something, all the time, like cardboard and rope and line and things like that, it's going to get dull faster than this knife that you take out of your pocket to cut pieces of apple. I'm not saying that's what I do with this. I'm just saying, like this, Nitro V is close to 14 C28. I don't think it is. I don't like Nitro V. I really don't think it is. I think Nitro V is closer to... Here's the thing. People like to compare steels, like, oh, well, that steel is like this. It's not. Like, they have completely different chemical components. And even if something is close, it's not going to be the same. Comparing steels with different chemical compositions is like comparing apples and spare tires. They are that far removed from each other. Like, there are some knives that, like, some steels that are a different version. Like, there was AEB steel, and then there was AEBL steel, which, like they were really close, right? And there's like variations of steels that come out, like 14 or like 440C versus 440A and 440. You know what I'm saying? Like 440J. There's constituent elements, but they're kind of similar. They're the same base construct, but even in those, the difference between 440A and 440J is as drastic as cats and dogs. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's comparing steels, you really can't do. You can look at some of the elements like, oh yeah, it's about as rust resistant as this. But it also is dependent on heat treat. You can have a run of knives from 2 different companies in the exact same steel from the exact same batch and have them be so far removed from each other that you're like, it's got to be a different steel. And that's based on heat treat. Like I said, I don't like AEBL. I love this knife, and it's an AEBL, and this is one of the better steels I've had. It all depends on heat treat. This batch of AEBL could have been done from the same exact batch of AEBL that they used to make a bunch of knives that I think the blade is garbage and that the steel is garbage. It all depends on how the heat treat's done and things like that. So comparing steels, it's really hard to do. Yeah, are they going to have some similarities? Yeah, 20 CV. The only difference is if you have variations, like different formulations of the basic same steel. M390, 204P, 20 CV are almost identical. They're basically analogs for each other. There still are some differences, but they're so minute. Polymer knives. I don't like the polymer knives. These things, you talking about one of these? Why don't I like Nitro V? Same reason I don't like some other steels. The edge, it's the edge. It has everything to do with how the edge feels. Elliott Williamson over at Farrah Forge Knife Works had some knives made in Nitro V. And I didn't like it. I just didn't like the edge it takes. I do know that it's basically, they added vanadium to 14C28N, but it changed the characteristics, and the way they did it changed it to a point that I don't like the edge it takes. So the edge for me is not as good, the kind of edge it takes. So I love 14C28N. There you go. The carbide structure changed. 14C28N is incredible. It is. There's another steel that I forgot that I do love that is on that super steel. And guys, if you want to check them out, KATSU Knives, I have a coupon code, crazysharp, all one word, with them. And I also have a link down below. You save 10%. This is ZDP 189, and it's an incredible steel. It is absolutely insane. This is at 67.5 Rockwell. And it's insane. I forgot ZDP 189, if it's heat treated properly. I forgot it. This thing's great. This is an insane knife. They did send this to me. They are the company that's making my my new folding knife design. This needs strop. I use this a lot. It holds an edge forever. So ZDP 189 is on that list of steels I like. But for me, my choice of steel is always going to be, how does the edge, what is the edge it takes? Now, unlike Peterbilt Knife Guy, I'm not trying to cut nails. I'm typically cutting wood, cardboard, line, or plastic, as opposed to trying to drive a $300 knife through a nail. So, I mean, here's the thing. Cerberus versus Snape. Here's the thing. Not everybody's sweat composition and the environment they're in is going to be the same. You would basically just have to like try out some knives, right? If you guys don't follow Peterbilt Knife Guy, you probably should. He's been, I don't know if he's just trying to destroy his entire collection of knives so his children can't sell them off when he gets older, but like, I'm like, either Peterbilt knife guy is having a midlife crisis and a come apart, and is just deciding to destroy a bunch of stuff to spite his wife because he spent all, like, I could see it, like, I'll show her I'm not selling a fucking one of these. I'm going to destroy them all. And then goes out and tries to pound them through nails. And then that way his wife is like, did you sell those knives? It's like, I can't now. I broke them all. It's like, just out of spite. It's just like, I'm not doing it. I'll destroy them first, and I'm going to film it. M4. I like M4. I haven't had any Cold Steel's M4, but M4 is a good steel. I'm going to tell you right now, Spyderco's Crewwear is up there. This is a custom knife with a custom heat treat on its Crewwear, and I think that Spyderco's Crewwear heat treat that on this one that I got is as good. This is custom heat treat level heat treat, and I gotta say their heat treat has gotten so much better. This is the best heat treat I've ever had on S90V outside of custom heat treat. So we're talking, these two are comparable. S90V and Crewwear are comparable to custom heat treat custom knives. So at any rate, I'm gonna get off of here. It's been 2 hours. I love you guys, but I don't love you enough to hang out any longer than I already have. So I have to clean this mess up because I have to film today and tomorrow because I believe I start work this week, which means I'm gonna have a real hard time for the first little bit of having time to film and managing my time and stuff until I see what my schedule looks like and stuff like that. Subscribe now before you leave. Drop a like on your way out. And if you did drop a super chat, thank you very much. Oh, well, there's only one. So at any rate, I love you guys. I'm out of here. I'll see you later.